Hey, what's going on? So, I'm just gonna jump right into it right now. Well, I guess I'll do a little intro. You're watching Adam Rona. No, you're not. I'm fucking Adam Rona still. Whoa. You're watching Zero to Hero, where I talk about my business adventure. Except for today, I'm going to talk about health-related things because that's what happens sometimes. Yeah. So just quick updates since I do technically talk about where I'm at right now in my little projects. I'm almost done with the book. I've got about 100 pages left, so I'm like within, 120 pages roughly out of 384 page book. So it'll take me a couple more days, but I'll be pretty done. I'm in chapter 8 out of 10, so whatever. However, more importantly, I've been working on a lot of research for trying to figure out for my next book. Cancer doesn't just fall out of the sky, and I figured that I'd take the opportunity today to start talking about one of the concepts I just was reminded of. I'm listening to a book right now, audio book in my car called Overdiagnosed. And I remember when I first came across this book, as with a lot of them, I was doing some research on, based around what this one guy was talking about. He had a YouTube channel. He passed away now, unfortunately, but his name was Dr. Donald Mayfield. And he talked about a lot of different things. He gave me plenty of opportunities to look up different materials. So one of the books he talks about is Overdiagnosed, which is from a physician who, he's not against medicine or anything like that, but his biggest plot for the story is the fact that we often get treated for diseases that would have otherwise not caused any problems if they would have just been allowed to run their course. And in this situation, where a benign condition which doesn't show symptoms is found in a screening just done routinely, because some people just do screenings at certain ages for the hell of it, then this is considered being overdiagnosed. Now, here's a very simple way of looking at things, and it's really kind of funny when you think about it. I want to use an example back in the day to kind of illustrate the idea. There was a statistic specifically talking about how people who donate plasma, on average, have better blood. I don't remember what they were using to judge this, so bear with me. It just, whatever it is that you characterize as being better or not. Maybe they could have been talking about cholesterol or something. This has been a while since I heard this study. But they found a correlation that they had better blood than people who did not donate plasma. Now, right off the bat, that would probably make you think, oh, well, what is it about the plasma, or what is it about donating plasma, inserting a giant ass needle into your arm and extracting all of your blood, siphoning out the plasma and putting your regular blood back in? How is that benefiting the human being? Holy moly, that was a huge belch. That's the first question that comes to mind, right? Okay, so what are these people doing? What's so special about donating their plasma? Well, that's the first way of looking at a question, and what typically people do when they hear a statistic. Now, the funny part about a statistic like this is that we're always led to believe that the results are correlated with the activity, right? What do I mean by that? Well, one could assume that because they donate more plasma, or they donate plasma, that they are healthier because they've donated plasma, because the study says so. When in reality, it is people who are typically more healthy that are able to donate plasma, which is the reality of it, because when you're in an unhealthy condition, you can't necessarily pass the screening process, which will allow you to donate plasma. Does that make sense to you? There's a pre-screening. If you don't pass that, you can't. Well, if you've got, we'll just call it bad. I don't like saying bad blood because that's what they said back in like the medieval days. They're talking about bad blood in people and these ridiculous processes to try to get rid of it, like trepidation and stuff like that. Jesus. But they had, worse off blood than somebody who was, obviously healthier, and they were able to, as a result, go ahead with the donation process. This is a huge, this has huge implications for a couple reasons. Because, for one, we often think that, okay, we hear a statistic and we say that, oh crap, that must mean that this process is more beneficial. When in reality, there's a different reason entirely why it is that statistic could be possible. And we don't always think about what led up to them. There's a book I really am interested in getting into. I haven't had the opportunity to read it yet, but I remember Dr. Mayfield always talking about it, called How to Lie with Statistics. And it's a very similar kind of idea. Well, since I don't know too much of that book specifically, let me go into a little bit into Overdiagnosed. One of the examples that he gives in there, and he gives absolutely just oodles, like this is a book that literally is just non-stop talking about situations where people are getting treatments or being screened for something in situations where they most likely would not have needed them, and the screening, well, not the screening per se, but the treatment ends up putting them in a position where they're worse off. And he's talking about prostate cancer at one point. Oh God, I've got to... Hold on one second, I've got to... Fuck, what is going on? Okay, bear with me for 1 second. I've got my radio in the back, making a ruckus. Come on. Come on, really? Alright, wasn't expecting that. Hopefully that didn't fuck up the whole video. I mean, me ranting is fucking up the video. Or making it better. That's the best way to think of it, right? So, I lost my thought. That doesn't make it any better. Okay. So he's talking about rectal cancer. Or not rectal cancer. He's talking about prostate cancer. And how... Well, let me break it down to you the most simple way possible. When you look for something, you're bound to find it. When you look for it more, you're bound to find more of it. So he's talking out through the entire book, even beyond prostate cancer. This is one of the several avenues he's referring to. But when people who come in with absolutely no symptoms just have a routine screening, they usually find that somewhere they have at least a couple abnormalities. And based around studies in general, people, like everybody, has about 2 or 3 abnormalities wrong with them all the time. So the idea is that you have absolutely no symptom that's going to evolve into any discomfort and nothing that's going to kill you outright. But they find cancers completely that aren't doing anything. They're not metastasizing, they're not even taking up that much real estate. They're just literally there for whatever reason. And that leads to biopsies, and that leads to other stuff, and then they find out there's more cancer, and then before you know it, you end up having cancer treatment for something that would never affect you at all. And then in the prostate situation, that ended up causing a lot of people to have rectal cancers or problems with defecating because they destroyed it from radiation therapy. Another example used was with thyroid cancer. He said that the typical death rate was about 1,500 people a year who would die from thyroid, but the people who got diagnosed was like 37,000 people per year. So obviously way more people are getting diagnosed with the problem than they are actually dying from the disease. natural assumption is, oh, well, that must mean they're really good at preventing it or treating it with, a treatment of some sort, when in reality, it's more likely due to the fact that people who are well are being diagnosed with situations that they don't really have. Another classic example is cholesterol. I don't know the statistics right now, I don't have it in front of me, but, this is with cholesterol, diabetes, a whole bunch of stuff. People use arbitrary numbers to try to figure out what the guidelines of a healthy working body is. So with cholesterol, they suggest that there's a certain number that if you reach this threshold, you are prone to risk for such and such and such and such, right? So over time, those arbitrary numbers sometimes get changed. And then literally, by lowering it by 0.1, like the threshold, you've automatically given people who didn't have any problems the previous day that disease or whatever it is. Like, all of a sudden these people now have arteriosclerosis, or all of a sudden these people now have cancer or diabetes, purely because the numbers that we use to determine whether or not it's a working human being is lowered or not. And what's particularly very fascinating about these kind of things as well is that these numbers sometimes are influenced by people that end up benefiting from it. So that means whether or not that threshold is lowered, in a lot of instances, is due to the influence of somebody who monetarily benefits by that number going down, because it creates more patients and it creates more people within that range to be therefore treated, and then especially overdiagnosed. So that's a very, very if you look for anything, you're going to find it. And this book is definitely proving that everyone has cancer. Everyone has, a whole bunch of shit that you would never think, because we all have abnormalities. But that's all for today. I want you to keep that in mind.